Everyone. Hope you've all had a good festive period. Happy New Year. It's been a while, but I am back and I'm going to start as a bit of a New Year's resolution. I'm going to try and do a bit more of a regular upload session, hopefully aiming for about 2 videos a week. I've got the Call of Cthulhu campaign that I still am going to want to finish off, hopefully in the next couple of months. But I just thought I'll get back into a quick little game. I picked up, so obviously I'm using the Internet Archive for this book. This is Grail Quest Book 2, The Den of Dragons. But I actually picked this up in a charity shop about a month ago. I haven't had a chance to play through it yet, so I thought it might be interesting to play through it with you guys. As I say, I've got the physical one, but I'm just playing it off of the Internet Archive because it's just a lot easier to record the screen and that. So let's get to it. As I say, I've not actually played this one before, so it's completely new to me as well. Here we are. So let's start with Grail Quest, The Den of Dragons. The Den of Dragons is the second book of the Grail Quest. Different kind of mystery series. Okay, so that's just the introduction. So yes, the second book apparently kind of leans in from the first one, but not too much. You play the same character, but you can pick it up standalone anyway, which is what we'll be doing. So this is the map of the village that we'll be entering. This first chapter is Merlin. Hello. Is anybody there? Can you hear me? Can you read me? I am speaking into a seashell. I suppose it should be a little bit more accurate.
A conch shell, to be exact. 4 knights and a sergeant-at-arms think I've gone bonkers. But they know nothing about magic. No, indeed. When you're a wizard like me, you can use a conch shell like a telephone, which is just as well since telephones haven't been invented in my time. Hello, is anybody there? At the other end of my conch shell, this is Camelot calling. Are you receiving me? You, yes, you, the one sitting there reading that Grail Quest book. It's part of my magic. That book, yes, indeed, and a very important part. You are reading a spell. Did you know that? I wrote it myself and sent it forward through time in the shape of a book. It's a neat spell. It catches your mind as you read the book. Net it like a fish, I hope. Then I draw in the net, and next thing you know, you're in my time. Your mind is away, your body stays still, more or less, where it is. You'd like to visit my time, wouldn't you? It's full of interesting things. Knights, squires, jousting, quests, that sort of thing. It's the time of King Arthur, the time of Camelot, and the round table, or table round, as people insist on calling it wrongly. I read that bit wrong. Never mind. I want to visit my time. I need you to visit my time. There's a bit of a problem with dragons. Just a small thing. You'll sort it out in no time. You'll find it easy to visit. Just carry on reading this book, and all there is to it. Turn a few pages, and the spell will start to work. That isn't too hard, is it? Nearly forgot. When you arrive, you'll find you've become Pip, the adopted child of a freeman farmer called John and his wife Miriam. Pip's been leading a fairly quiet life of recently, but all that's about to change. You'll need to bring dice with you, ordinary six-sided, preferably with spots. You'll need one at least, though 2 would be better.
I've only got one, but that will have to do. Where was I?
You'll also need a bit of paper, something to write with, and an eraser. That's the equipment you'll need to get you started. Just go off and collect it now before you do anything else. Then you can begin.
All right then. So I've got paper here already. Got my 1 6-sided dice, which should just be enough. Okay. I don't know if this is still in Merlin's voice or not. I'll just read it as normally. The threat to Avalon. There was always trouble when it rained in August. The first 2 weeks, especially, old residents would look up at the London sky and mumble grimly, "Rain in August the first week. Next year's outlook will be bleak." And anyone who happened to overhear them would pronounce adding the second half of the ancient saw, "And if the rain continues on, all hope for peace times is gone." Well, it had rained the first week of August last year, and the second, and the third, and the fourth. In fact, it was still raining well into September, by which time everybody was thoroughly sick of listening to the old residenters mumbling grumbly to themselves. Everybody was thoroughly nervous as well. A wet start to August meant a good breeding season for dragons, which in turn meant a plague of the fire breathers when they reached maturity the next year. The Knights of the Round Table would do their bit in killing off the pests, of course, but when there was a really good breeding season, there were never enough knights to go around. So the dragons rampaged something shocking, setting thatch alight, devouring cattle, terrorizing villagers, and carrying off maidens. But that wasn't the only thing. Last August, the August we've been talking about, there were omens as well as rain. At least the old residenters claimed they were omens. Lightning blasted the Druid Oak on Glastonbury Common twice in succession during a particularly violent storm, which is this lovely illustration here. Everybody knows lightning never strikes twice in the same place, muttered the old residenters grimly. That be an omen, that be. Then there were the businesses with the grave digger, who managed to bury himself in an open grave. When the funeral procession arrived with the coffin, there was no neat hole for it to go in, only a slight indentation filled with loose earth, and beneath it the unfortunate grave digger, now as dead as his former clients. The inquest decided it was an accident, a landslip brought on by all the rain, but the old residenters were far from satisfied. "Old Silas would never have made a mistake like that," they muttered grimly, referring to the late gravedigger. "That be an omen, that be." And so it went on throughout the rainy month of August. A massive thunderstone ploughed a deep furrow through Farmer Gabriel's meadow and killed 5 of his sheep. A 2-headed calf was born in the herd that kept the abbey monks supplied with milk. King Arthur's favourite falcon slipped its tie and flew off southwards, never to be seen again. And for once it turned out that the old residenters were absolutely right. The following year was absolutely dreadful. Fresh, vigorous young dragons popping up all over the realm, with new ones appearing as fast as the harassed knights could kill the old ones off. But that wasn't the worst of it. The plague of dragons could be easily enough explained by the good breeding season occasioned by the rainy August. The omens pointed towards something else. The old residenters waited patiently, nodding their heads grimly at each new report of dragon damage. "That bean't the worst to come," they would say. "Not by a long chalk." The worst to come came in June, on a cloudless day that promised a long, dry summer. On the morning of that day, a carriage emblazoned with ecclesiastical insignia thundered, unannounced, up to the gates of Camelot with quite uncelestial indications of haste, and there emerged from it, demanding immediate audience with the king, a portly messenger from his eminence the Archbishop of Canterbury. You can tell I've not read this before. He was admitted at once, of course, and despite a tendency towards pomposity, managed to capture King Arthur's attention with the very first words he spoke. The words were, "Your Majesty, a brass dragon has escaped from hell." Now, this was not, of course, precisely true. Brass dragons were extremely rare in Avalon, or anywhere else for that matter, and there was considerable controversy about their origins. Churchmen generally believed that they were bred in hell itself and said so dogmatically whenever the subject arose in conversation. But the infernal origins of brass dragons had never been satisfactorily proven, and there was a body of opinion which held that the beasts came from somewhere else. The truth was, no one quite knew for sure, not even the old residenters who thought they knew everything. What everyone did know was that brass dragons were very bad news indeed. A word about dragons generally may not go amiss here, since not everyone is personally familiar with the breed. Your average run of the mill dragon, the sort that mates in August if it's raining, is a grey skinned, scaled, and rigid backed reptile weighing somewhere around 6 tons and growing a length of 5 metres. There are two main species: those that move on 4 feet and are fully equipped with claws, and those which move mainly by means of their two hind legs and use their shortened front legs rather like arms. The latter type, which are generally more intelligent, have claws only on the hind feet. The 4 feet have developed into hands of sorts. But both species are aggressive, vicious, and extremely difficult to kill on account of their heavy scaling, which acts as natural armor. Both are meat eaters, which accounts for the devoured cattle and probably the missing maidens, and both share the curious habit of consuming foliage from chestnut trees during the first hour and 15 minutes after sunrise. The business with the chestnut leaves has nothing to do with hunger. Leaves consumed at this time do not travel down the normal digestive tract, which does not open until 2 hours after sleep, but go instead to a second stomach set forward and a little below that which the reptile uses to digest food. Here in the second stomach, the leaves are converted into sedimentary layers of humus, which, encouraged by the dragon's body heat, gives off vast quantities of methane gas. Methane, as you probably know, is highly inflammable. What you may not know is that once a dragon is 4 months old, it develops crystalline extrusions on its upper fangs and a thin layer of natural metallic capping on the lower. The result of these developments is that when the dragon snaps its jaws together sharply, it produces a spark. This spark will normally ignite the almost continuous flow of methane from the second stomach, producing the fiery dragon breath with breath which is such a distinctive feature of the breed. All in all, dragons are very formidable creatures, but brass dragons make ordinary dragons look like pussycats. There have only been 5 authenticated appearances of brass dragons in the whole of recorded human history: two in Asia, one in Europe, and one in Spain, and one which turned up in Londinium before the Romans left. In every instance, the destruction was massive. 3/4 of Londinium were demolished or ravaged by fire, and 17 of the very finest Roman legions completely wiped out before the beast stupidly consumed the entire stock of an alehouse and drowned after falling drunkenly into the Thames. While the natural history of the ordinary dragon is relatively well known, no one really has the least idea where brass dragons come from, what laws govern their abrupt appearance, or how to get rid of them when they do appear. Typically, a brass dragon will turn up out of the blue, run riot for several months or years, then simply disappear. The drowned dragon of Londinium was unusual in the way it met its fate. No one ever succeeded in killing one, neither knight nor commoner. One reason for this noteworthy failure is that there is every indication brass dragons may be magic. No wonder the church considers they escaped from hell. "A brass dragon?" gasped King Arthur. "Escaped from hell," confirmed the Archbishop's messenger grimly. They sound the same. I'm getting confused with my voices. At which the pent-up tensions of the court exploded abruptly, and everyone began to talk at once. Swoon, scream, run, and otherwise react to the news. It was pandemonium. King Arthur had to wait for order to be restored before he heard the whole story. First off, there was absolutely no doubt the monster really being a brass dragon. Although rare, the species was quite unmistakable. For start, they grew more than twice the size of ordinary dragons, and their colour from far from grey is metallic brass, which glints and sparkles in the sunshine. Then there was magic. Brass dragons have generally been credited with all the sorts of wonders, including the power of speech. No one had heard this particular brass dragon talk yet, and its wonders were so far confined to the now you see it, now you don't variety, appearing and disappearing without anybody knowing where it came from or where it went to. But this was more than enough to establish that it was magic. The first reported sighting of the beast was near a forest close by Winchester, where it was apparently amusing itself by demolishing a woodsman's hut. The artisan who saw it had a drink taken, so his story was given less credence than it might, even though the wreckage of the hut was plainly there for all to see. The creature next turned up briefly in Cornwall, although how King Arthur, who had relatives in Cornwall, missed hearing about it was a mystery. Several fishermen pulling out in pursuit of the day's catch noticed it clinging to a cliff face. Since they were sober men, as sailors have to be, obviously, their word was believed, although a party of men at arms sent to investigate could discover not a hint of anything on or near the cliff. There was what might have been a third manifestation far to the north, where something, although no one could say exactly what, had torn huge holes in the remains of Hadrian's Wall, that vast rampart left by the Romans to keep the greedy Scots from marching south to sell the English whisky. But the most of it was the attack on Carin Abbas Monastery, that ancient seat of learning overlooked by a very rude picture of a giant carved into a hillside in prehistoric times. It was from that very hillside that the brass dragon had approached. The survivors claimed it was as large as a castle, with eyes the size of soup plates and a flaming breath more than 100 meters long. The ground shook with every step it took. Its roar was like thunder, and so on. All greatly exaggerated, no doubt, as these things tend to be. But the fact remained that Serene Abbas Monastery was no more. The stonework was demolished, as if struck down by an army of battering rams. The woodwork was burned to a cinder. All the tapestries, rush matting, curtaining, and a priceless library of books, manuscripts, and scrolls went up in smoke. The abbot was burned to death trying to save a relic of the true cross from the monastery chapel. 178 monks were trapped beneath the fallen rubble. Herds of cattle and sheep lay dead and mangled in the monastery fields. Even the kitchen garden at the back was buried under a pile of evil smelling manure, which, unlike normal manure, killed off plants rather than encouraged their growth. Out of this whole disaster, only 2 young monks escaped with their lives. They had been sent off on a 10-mile hike as penance for talking in chapel, which just goes to show it doesn't pay to be good all the time. And the only artifact that was saved was a stained glass window depicting the Holy Grail. Since this should certainly have been broken, its survival was seen as confirmation that the destruction was the devil's work, the devil being unable to harm anything as holy as the Holy Grail. This was a catastrophe of almost unimaginable proportions, and there was no doubt a brass dragon had been involved, although the 2 young monks saw nothing of it. The creature's rampage had been witnessed, at a safe distance, by no fewer than 80 pilgrims from Londinium who were travelling to Serene Abbots to view the same relic, which had been the death of the abbot. When news reached the archbishop, who was usually the last to be told anything due to his fiery temper, it produced a predictable reaction. His language was so extreme that one churchwarden was heard to remark he would personally have preferred to face a dragon any day. But sharp tempers are quick to abate, and the archbishop was no fool. He realized that if a brass dragon was on the loose, something had to be done about it, and quickly. Thus, when he had regained control of himself, he dispatched a messenger to Camelot, the same messenger who now related the whole sorry tale to King Arthur. And the king, who was one of those firmly convinced brass dragons were magical by nature, in turn dispatched a messenger of his own. That messenger was instructed to find the wizard Merlin in Merlin's crystal cave. You open your eyes groggily. Light flickers and flashes in mad patterns as if you have fallen into a giant kaleidoscope. Colours shimmer and dance, blending into delicate traceries and patterns. Your right cheek stings as if someone had slapped it. Come on, no time to waste. A white bearded old man is leaning over you, his pointed hat askew. Behind him, the dancing colours form a rainbow halo. What? You ask stupidly. Come on, Pip, the white beard man says crossly. Just pull yourself together, and don't pretend you don't recognize me. You do, or you will. Merlin, got that? Merlin. Say, Merlin. Merlin, you echo, frowning. That's it, Merlin. Good, fine, we're making progress. And you're Pip. He points a bony finger at his chest. Me, Merlin, you, Pip. Me, Pip, you, Merlin, you repeat, feeling a bit of a fool. You sit up. You sit up. You are in the strangest place you have ever seen. A vast cavern of pure crystal. Crystal stalagmites rise up from the floor. Crystal stalactites hang down from the roof. The walls are rough, unworked outcrops of crystal. The roof is crystal. The floor is crystal. You have been lying on a large rectangular slab. That, too, is crystal. The cavern is well lit by torches. How many torches you could not begin to guess, for each one reflects and reflects again in the crystal, making it impossible to count. You turn your head slowly. Proportions of the natural crystal have been worked and cut into shapes. There are crystal tables, crystal benches, and even what looks suspiciously like a crystal throne on crystal dais. Even the cabinets and chests are crystal, so their contents can be seen easily within them. Merlin, you say again. Is it you? Yes, Merlin mutters impatiently. Quite definitely me, and in grave danger of having my pension docked. Dreadful business. Are you properly awake? You nod, dumbly, still 3/4 ways entranced by your surroundings. Merlin catches your look. My crystal cave, he explains. Interesting, isn't it? A few people here even been here, except for me. Very few. I brought Attila the Hun once, but he broke some of the furniture, so I don't do much entertaining here now. It's mainly used for magic. The crystal focuses Earth's energies, and that makes magic easier. Now you are properly awake? You nod again. Properly awake or not, you are still quite confused. Well, says Merlin, now you're here, I'd better tell you what all the trouble is. A brass dragon, and that's what the trouble is. Wiped out an entire monastery, monks and all. Probably deserved it, of course. Can't stand monks myself. Always creeping about in cloisters instead of doing anything useful. But the archbishop was annoyed, and the king wants to keep on the right side of him. So my pension will be docked unless we do something about it. And well, unless you do something about it, Pip. Definitely a job for a fighter, this. Somebody who knows about getting rid of brass dragons. You do know about getting rid of brass dragons, don't you? You shake your head. No. Well, never mind. You soon will. The trick with brass dragons is to kill them before they kill you. That's all there is to it, really, except for closing the gateway, of course. Gateway? That was you again, though thoroughly confused. Gateway, Merlin says. You aren't one of those idiots who think brass dragons come from hell, are you? No, you say warily, although in truth you haven't the faintest idea where brass dragons come from. Good, says Merlin, because they don't. They come from the ghastly kingdom of the dead, every one of them. Yes, indeed. Without exception, the ghastly kingdom of the dead is what you might call their natural habitat, and a very nasty natural habitat it is. But that's a different story. So when you find a brass dragon wandering around Avalon, or anywhere else on Earth for that matter, it follows that one of the gateways to the ghastly kingdom must be open. Otherwise, the dragon couldn't have gotten out, could it? So we, or you, that is, must kill the dragon, then close the gateway. Nothing else for it. If we, you, leave the gateway open, heaven knows what else might come out. Brass dragons aren't the worst you'll find in the ghastly kingdom of the dead. That's why they call it ghastly. So off you go now, and get this mess cleared up. I'll trot off to Camelot and tell the king that everything's in hand. Just a minute, you protest. Merlin holds up one skinny hand. You're right. You need life points. Can't do much in my time without them, can you? No, indeed. Right. Now roll your dice. 2 dice once, or 1 dice twice. Doesn't matter which. You roll the die. You roll the dice while Merlin watches with a giving it eye. Right. So I'm rolling 1 dice twice. So I've got a 1. Wonderful. And another 1. Wonderful. You won't get. Now add the scores together. Right, so that's 2. He tells you you won't get less than 2, and you can't get more than 12. Right, well, I've got 2. Brilliant. That's the way it is with life points. With your life points, anyway. Now multiply your answer by 4. So that is 2 times 4, 8. That's your life points. Write them down quickly now. Right, so I'll write life points starting 8. The worst possible result. Hey ho. He looks around furtively as if he might be worried somebody was listening, then leans forward and whispers something in your ear. If you don't think you have enough, do the whole thing again. You can do it 3 times if you want and pick the best score, but no more than 3 times. More than that interferes with the spell, and we wouldn't want that, would we? Not where my pension's at stake. It's literally as if he heard me. Right, I'll tell you what, I'll do it again. I'll do it 3 times, see what we got. Right, that's a 6 and a 3. So that's 9. It's 3, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 10. That'll be better. Right. So 10 times 4 more. No. No, that was 7. So that's why they say you should probably have 2. It makes it a lot less confusing. So what did I get? 7. Okay, so 7. Okay, so that's 28. It's a bit better. So we'll start with 28. It seems a bit high. You won't get less than 10. You can't get more than 12. That's by 4. Yeah. 28. That's a big jump from 8 to 28. We'll take that. Merlin straightens up and goes on much more loudly. Now, fighting. There's going to be a lot of fighting, I'm afraid, but at least it's not as painful as fighting in your own world. Just roll dice for you and your opponent. Quite easy, really. 2 dice each time. Look, I'll make it simpler for you. First, you roll dice to see who has the first strike. Roll for your opponent, then for yourself. Highest score gets first hit. You always do that unless surprise comes into it, and if it does, you'll be told at the time, so that's all right. Next, you roll 2 dice each time.
Next, you roll 2 dice each time a strike is made. If you're rolling for your strike, you have to roll a 6 or better. Otherwise, you've missed. When you're rolling for your opponent, you'll be told what he, she, or it needs to hit you. If it isn't mentioned, take it that they need a 6 as well. Anything you roll above the strike figure counts as damage. Damage is subtracted from your or your opponent's life points. That's how you fight. At least that's how it goes with a fist fight. If you're using weapons, you do more damage. If you're wearing armor, it cuts down on damage. And since you'll be using this, you'll generally only need a 4 or better to hit somebody. This turns out to be something rather interesting. Merlin takes a wooden case from beneath one of the crystal tables and opens it carefully. Inside is the most beautiful handmade little sword you have ever seen. If you have read The Castle of Darkness, turn to 1. If not, go to 2. Right, so we'll go to 2 because I've not read that one. I say I've not read it. I'll go to 2. Now this, says Merlin, is Excalibur Jr., a very special sword, made him myself, so I should know. He's an exact model of King Arthur's sword. An exact model, except smaller. And he talks, unlike King Arthur's Excalibur, non-stop sometimes. Say hello to Pip, EJ. To your amazement, the sword says doubtfully, "Hello, Pip." In something akin to awe, you reach out and take hold of the sword. It feels beautifully balanced, light but powerful. Wow, you remark, using expression that isn't heard much in King Arthur's time. But Merlin seems to understand it. Wow, indeed, he says. When you use that sword, you only need to roll a 4 on 2 dice to hit somebody. It's part of the magic. And you score an additional 5 points of damage over and above any the dice may show. That's part of the magic too. Now go to 4. Is that it? You ask, frowning. No, says Merlin. No, indeed. Mustn't be impatient. Sometimes you'll find that a creature isn't as evil as it looks. Isn't as evil as it looks, and that it doesn't want to fight you. To find out, roll 1 dice once for your opponent and 1 die 3 times for yourself. If you score less than your enemy, he has given you a friendly reaction and you can continue on your way. If it all gets too much for you, you can try getting some life points back by sleeping. You can do this any time except when actually in battle. It's not quite as simple as it sounds, though. Roll 1 die. If you get a 1, 2, 3, or 4, you must turn to dream time at the back of the book, where you might lose even more life points. You get a 5 or 6, you have slept successfully and can get back 2 dice rolls worth of life points. It's a bit of a gamble, really, but generally you'll be far too busy fighting to sleep, so you'll need your equipment and weapons. And magic, you say quickly, wondering what you are getting yourself into. And magic. Won't get far against a brass dragon without magic. Right, take this. And from the depths of his robe, a powder blue robe, not his usual white one, he pulls out a scroll, which he hands to you. You unroll the scroll, which, like most of Merlin's scrolls, is written on excellent quality parchment, but marred by blots. Although you may have hoped it to be a magical scroll, it is not. However, it does have your name on it. You look up at Merlin, frowning. What's this? He seems embarrassed and does not meet your eye. Your shopping list. Just a few items you might need. But why does it have the cost beside each one? Merlin coughs. I'm afraid you're going to have to buy your gear. Since the king docked my pension, I can't afford to equip you, so you'll have to buy your own. But I don't have any money, you protest. That is quite true, Merlin agrees, and it might be a real problem if I hadn't foreseen it. He opens a small crystal cabinet and takes from it 2 transparent cubes, which, on closer inspection, you see to be dice. Magic dice, he explains shortly. They convert enthusiasm into money. Can't use them myself, since I haven't much enthusiasm left after the king docked my pension. But a young person like yourself should have lots of enthusiasm.
He hands you the dice.
Throw them firmly onto the ground.
Okay, so that's the shopping list. Let's throw. So I've got a 3 and a 3. So that is 6 in total. Make a note of that. There's nothing else for it but throw the dice, Pip. As you do so, they explode in a silent fashion of gold light. But just before the explosion, you could see the score. Roll your own dice to find out what it was. Every point scored represents a gold piece, and 1 gold piece is equal to 10 silver pieces. Looks as though you may be able to afford some equipment after all. Merlin coughs again.
Weapons too, and armor, if you want it.
He produces a second scroll.
Afraid weapons and armor are quite expensive these days.
You look at the 2 parchment lists, and then look at Merlin with a distinctly sinking feeling. This is going to be some costly mission. What you must now do, Pip, is spend your money wisely to equip yourself for the adventure to follow. Remember, all prices on the lists are given in silver pieces, and there are 10 silver pieces to 1 gold piece. Take a little time to decide what you might need. Obviously, a weapon of some sort is a high priority for those times when EJ is uncooperative, or a different weapon is more suitable than a sword. You can't use more than 1 weapon at a time, though. If your life points are low, it might be worthwhile investing in some armor, although it is very costly, and buying some means you will have little or nothing left on other necessities. If you had ventured through the Castle of Darkness and have a magical dragon skin jacket you can put on. No, I haven't got that. Don't forget, you may have to travel a long way to find this rampaging brass dragon, so a supply of food might be a good idea unless you plan to live off the land. But it's entirely up to you what you decide to buy, just so long as you have the gold to cover it. Write down the things you are taking on your quest journal, and remember that if it isn't on your list during the adventure, you can't use it. If you have any money left over, write that down too. Money can come in very handy on a long journey. Okay, let's tell you what. Let's buy our equipment, and then I think we'll end it there for today, and we'll pick it up next time. So let's go through the shopping list then. So we've got 6 gold pieces, which is what, 60 silver. Let's see. I think armor is probably a good thing. Although I've got what, 60 silver. And leather armor costs 50, so that'd only leave me with 10 silver left. Which means I would probably then take. Well, we've got bandages, change of song, food pack is 5. Okay, yeah, so I'll get. Let's take some leather armor. I'll write this down. Leather armor, and that is a -2 damage. And that costs 50, so that puts me down to 10 silver. I'll get a backpack for 1, because they're always handy. So that puts me down to 9, and I will get food pack. Yeah, food pack, which gives me 5 days rations. And then, so how much was that? It was 9, 8, 7, 8. So that puts me at 4 left. 4 silver left. 4 silver, I think. blanket, blanket. Yeah, and that leaves me 3 silver left over. Yep. So I've got a leather armor, which gives me -2 damage. I have a backpack, a food pack with 5 rations, and a blanket. So as I say, I will pause it there for today, and we'll pick it back up next time. Which, as I say, I'm planning on doing these every couple of weeks, so we'll pick this one back up in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm got to say I quite like the writing in this one. I've played through quite a few game books. This one's got quite a nice sort of tongue-in-cheek sort of comedy to it. It doesn't take itself too seriously. I quite like it. So yeah, hopefully you like it too, and I will see you next time. Thank you.